Hey everyone, welcome back to Corporate Decoder, the place where we peel back the layers of corporate jargon to find the real story. Today we're diving deep into 3D Systems Corporation's 2026 proxy statement. And let's just say tree's a lot to unpack, especially when it comes to how they're handling executive pay and their plans for the future. Stick around as we decode what these filings really mean for the company and its shareholders. And if you're new here and want to stay ahead of the curve on corporate filings, make sure you're subscribed. And join our Discord community, linked in the description below for even more insights. Alright, so first off, this is a definitive proxy statement, meaning it's the official document sent to shareholders before an annual meeting. Think of it as a company's yearbook and report card all rolled into one, giving you the rundown on important proposals, director elections, and that juicy executive compensation details. 3D Systems, as you know, is a major player in the 3D printing world. Pioneers really, they've got a broad portfolio across healthcare and industrial solutions. But lately, like many companies, they've been navigating some choppy economic waters. The CEO himself highlights that macroeconomic and geopolitical uncertainty has hit their hardware sales, though usage of consumables has stayed strong. They've also been busy cutting costs and restructuring to improve their bottom line. The big event is their 2026 annual meeting on May 14th, held virtually. Stockholders are being asked to vote on key items. This includes electing 9 directors, approving executive pay, ratifying their auditors, a big one, an amendment to increase authorized shares of common stock, and approving an amendment to their 2015 incentive plan. Let's talk about the directors first. They're nominating 9 individuals, all current directors looking to serve another year. Now, a few of these nominations come with a bit of backstory. At the 2025 meeting, one director, Miss Claudia N. Drayton, did not receive a majority of votes cast for her re-election. The board, after considering her resignation and reviewing her critical financial expertise, particularly as Audit Committee Chair, decided to reject her resignation. They believe her oversight is crucial, especially in addressing material weaknesses in internal controls. They also point out that these weaknesses predated her role, and that proxy advisory firms had recommended against her re-election due to these issues. Another interesting detail is the nomination of Mr. Thomas W. Erickson. He's 75, and the company has a policy against directors over 75, though they can make exceptions. The board decided to make an exception for Mr. Erickson, citing his valuable experience and the potential negative impact his departure would have on board continuity and ongoing projects, especially given his extensive qualifications and expertise. When they talk about director qualifications, they present a skills matrix. It shows Mr. Graves, the CEO, has strong senior leadership and global experience. Miss Clinton brings compliance and aerospace expertise. Miss Drayton brings that all-important financial expertise, as does Mr. Kever. Mr. Erickson and Mr. McClure offer broad executive and operational experience. Mr. Moore, who's been on the board for a while, also brings financial and operational insights. And then you've got folks like Dr. Padmanabhan with healthcare and product development skills, and Dr. Tracy with his engineering and manufacturing background, especially in aerospace. It's a pretty diverse set of skills they're highlighting, which is good for their complex business. They also touch on their corporate governance guidelines, which are basically the rules of the road for how the company is run at the board level. Things like board leadership, director independence, and how they handle related party transactions. You know, the stuff that makes sure things are running ethically and in the best interest of shareholders. The audit committee is particularly important. It's responsible for overseeing financial reporting, internal controls, and the work of the independent auditors. Ms. Drayton chairs this committee, and given the company's past issues with material weaknesses in internal controls, her role and the committee's work here are under a microscope. They mention making substantial progress in remediating these weaknesses in 2025, reducing them by 60%, but 2 still remain, though remediation is nearly complete. This progress is a big part of their argument for keeping Miss Drayton on the board. Now, let's get to the part many of you are probably waiting for: executive compensation. The compensation committee, made up of independent directors, is in charge here. They emphasize sound pay practices, including having an independent committee and an independent compensation advisor, which is good governance. A significant portion of executive pay is performance-based, meaning it's at risk and tied to company performance and stock price. This is a key point they want shareholders to understand. They also have stock ownership guidelines for executives and a clawback policy that allows them to recover incentive pay if financial results are restated due to misconduct. They've also done a risk assessment of their compensation programs and don't believe they create unreasonable risks for the business. This is where we see the actual numbers for 2025. The CEO, Dr. Jeffrey Graves, had a total compensation of over $1.4 million. This is a big drop from 2023 and 2024, which is interesting. His base salary remained flat at around $850,000. The bulk of his compensation in 2025 came from stock awards, primarily restricted stock and performance share units. Notably, no bonus payouts were made to any named executive officers in 2025 because the company did not meet its revenue and adjusted EBITDA targets. For Jeff Graves, his stock awards were valued at over $629,000 in 2025. Looking at the grants for 2025, you can see those performance share units, the SUS, which make up half of the long-term incentive. These are tied to total shareholder return, or TSR, over 3 years, and they've adjusted the performance metrics to focus on absolute TSR. Apparently, in response to shareholder feedback and to align with investor interests for higher stock appreciation. For the 2025 bonus program, the targets for revenue and adjusted EBITDA were not met, resulting in zero bonus payouts for any NEO. That is a pretty significant signal about the company's performance in 2025. At the end of 2025, Dr. Graves still had a considerable amount of unvested equity awards, including performance share units that could be worth over $438,000 if targets are met. Ms. Nordstrom, who stepped up as interim CFO in August 2025, received a special restricted stock award of $800,000, which vests over 3 years in connection with her expanded responsibilities. No stock options were exercised by the NEOs in 2025. What did vest were some restricted stock awards. For example, Dr. Graves saw over 184,000 shares vest, which was worth over $408,000 at the time. Now here is a statistic that often raises eyebrows, the CEO pay ratio. For 2025, the CEO's total compensation was about $1.49 million, while the median employee's compensation was around $83,600. That gives a ratio of 18-1. This is actually a pretty low ratio compared to many companies, suggesting that while executive pay is substantial, the gap between the top earners and the average employee isn't as wide as some other corporations. This section is crucial for understanding how pay actually aligns with performance. The table shows compensation actually paid or capped to the CEO and other NEOs versus different performance metrics like total shareholder return, net income, and adjusted EBITDA. For 2025, the cap to the CEO was actually negative, a significant figure of negative $119,838. This is largely due to how equity awards are accounted for. The value of equity awards granted in prior years that were unvested at year, and actually decreased substantially in value from the prior year. This highlights the volatility and the unrealized aspect of much of executive compensation, especially when stock prices are down or volatile. You can see that for 2023, 24, and 25, the realized and realizable compensation for the CEO was significantly lower than his target direct compensation, showing that a lot of his pay is indeed tied to performance that hasn't materialized in those years. Let's move on to the auditors. They're proposing to keep Deloitte and Touch LLP as their independent auditors for 2026. They were appointed in August 2024 following the dismissal of their previous auditors, BDO USA LLP, in December 2023. This auditor change and the reasons behind it, including disagreements over accounting treatment concerning revenue contracts and the disclosure of material weaknesses in internal controls, are detailed. But for 2025, the fees paid to Deloitte were about $4.4 million. This is a big one for the company's future flexibility. They want to almost double their authorized shares of common stock from 220 million to 440 million. The main reasons given are for equity incentive plans, raising capital through future stock sales, business expansion through acquisitions, strategic partnerships, and other unidentified corporate purposes. They need shareholder approval for this under Delaware law. The risk, of course, is that this could dilute existing shareholders' ownership and voting rights if a lot of new shares are issued. Following the shareholder approval for more authorized shares, the company is also asking to amend and restate their 2015 incentive plan. This essentially means they want to add 4 million more shares to the pool available for awards and extend the plan's term until 2036. They argue this is crucial for attracting and retaining talent, and that it aligns employee interests with shareholders. The plan includes many good governance features like no discounted options, no repricing without shareholder approval, and independent oversight. As of the 31st of December 2025, they had a little over 5 million shares available for future issuance under their equity plans. This request for an additional 4 million shares, coupled with the proposal to increase authorized shares, shows a clear intent to use equity compensation as a key tool for future strategy. Lots of good practical info here for shareholders. They explain how to vote, whether online, by phone, or by mail, and the deadlines. They also clarify the difference between being a record shareholder and a beneficial owner holding shares in street name, emphasizing how important it is for beneficial owners to provide voting instructions to their brokers. And importantly, they mention that most of these proposals, except for auditor ratification and increasing authorized shares, are not considered routine, meaning your broker can't vote your shares if you don't provide instructions, so make sure you vote. Finally, for those who want to engage directly, they provide an email address and a mailing address for communicating with the board of directors. So, what's the big picture here? 3D Systems is clearly in a transitional phase. They're facing economic headwinds, which have impacted sales and led to no annual bonuses for executives in 2025. The significant drop in the value of unvested equity awards, as seen in the pay versus performance data, shows that executive compensation is indeed tied to stock performance and market conditions, sometimes painfully so for the executives themselves. The board is taking steps to address past internal control issues, and they've made progress, but it's still an area of focus. The proposals to increase authorized shares and extend the equity incentive plan signal a confidence in future growth and a need for strategic flexibility. They are also showing a commitment to good governance through independent oversight and shareholder engagement, even when dealing with some tough votes on director re-elections. To wrap up, 3D Systems is working through a challenging market, but they're laying the groundwork for future growth, and their executive compensation reflects a strong link to performance, even if that performance has been mixed recently. The big question for investors will be whether these strategic moves into more shares and longer-term incentives will truly drive the value they're aiming for. What are your thoughts on 3D Systems' strategy and their approach to executive compensation? Let me know in the comments below. If you found this breakdown helpful, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more deep dives into corporate filings. And don't forget to join our Discord community for further discussion. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.